Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar is about the SMART Grant Program, Connected Vehicles, and Vehicle to Everything, or V2X technology. I am Eric Zimmerman, Executive Director at the National Association for Regional Councils. I am so pleased to be joined today by two great speakers on this topic. We'll hear first from Aaron Milligan, Founder and Chief Executive Officer at P3 Mobility. P3 Mobility seeks to improve safety, mobility, and sustainability through connected vehicle-to-everything technologies. P3 Mobility partners with local governments to expedite the adoption of V2X, helping overcome challenges with capital costs, technical knowledge, and policy decisions. Our second speaker, Chandra Ravida, serves as Interim Executive Director of the East Central Intergovernmental Association, the regional planning organization for Greater Dubuque, Iowa, including Cedar, Clinton, Delaware, Dubuque, and Jackson counties. The services and programs provided by ECIA cover 6 broad categories: community development, economic development, housing assistance, special programs, transit, and transportation and planning. Both P3 Mobility and ECIA have successfully secured federal SMART grants to support V2X deployment. You will hear about the broader SMART program and about each of these projects that these organizations are undertaking to deploy V2X. This is a timely discussion because the SMART program notice of funding opportunity is currently open, and there is time for you to apply if this approach is applicable for your community. We are recording this session, and we will make each speaker's slides available for you to download. We'll hold questions until both speakers have had a chance to present, but please enter them into the Q&A area on Zoom. With that, I will bring up Erin's slides and turn it over to her for her remarks.
Thanks, Eric. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to meet you all. Unfortunately, I can't see you, so I can only say hello from a distance. I'm glad to have the opportunity today to talk to you about the SMART Grant program that we are in the midst of right now. We are doing that project in partnership with the Road Commission for Oakland County in Michigan. I'll take you through a little bit about who we are and about the project that we have underway, and look forward to answering any questions at the end of our presentation. We can go to the next slide. Our agenda will be fairly brief today. Just waiting for this to, I don't think I can progress the slides, right, Eric? Or can I?
Nope, I got it.
Okay, thanks. So I'll share a little bit about our background. We'll give some information about the SMART Grant program, and then we'll talk specifically about the SMART Grant project we have underway in Oakland County. Next slide. So it's our mission, P3 Mobility's mission, to improve safety and mobility by accelerating the adoption of V2X technology. We were absolutely delighted when last fall the US DOT released their draft national V2X deployment plan. They set very aggressive goals for how quickly they wanted to see deployment happen across the country, and we think it is important that federal agencies get behind V2X technology. We all know that the technology has been through some hard times over the last few years, but it feels like the US DOT is standing strongly behind it and is working hard to see deployment happen. That being said, it can't just be a top-down process. There needs to be a bottoms-up element to it, and we're very glad to be part of projects that are being led by local communities to ensure that both top-down and bottoms-up deployments are happening. The unique thing that we do is to introduce a commercial model to the V2X ecosystem. That means that we enable subscription services that allow for revenue generation so that there's funding sustainability in a deployment. To date, all the deployments that have been done across the country have been funded with government dollars and government dollars alone. There's not been any privately financed deployments. And we're a big believer in the importance of being able to bring private financing to the table to help supplement government monies and to help ensure that those private dollars can be repaid so that there's an ongoing sustainable business model. We deliver a full range of connectivity using both the dedicated spectrum as well as the unlicensed spectrum, which now sits alongside the dedicated spectrum. That's called the UNI, or unlicensed Wi-Fi spectrum. That allows us to deliver a lot of the time-sensitive critical alerts that people are concerned about whether or not they can be deployed, given that this remaining spectrum is now less than was the case prior to the FCC reducing the amount of spectrum that's available. Our solution is interoperable. It's built upon the standards that have been developed by SAE and IEEE for the transportation and connected vehicle industries. So we're confident that deployments done in one location will be interoperable with deployments in another location. We're a big believer in the importance of privacy as it relates to transportation, and that personal and private data is sensitive and needs to be protected. It would only be unmasked with user consent, and the data would not be sold without user consent. And then finally, we believe that equity is a very important consideration, that life-saving V2X technology is really meant to support the most vulnerable of road users, and it's important that that VRU protection be part of deployments. Next slide. So what is a SMART grant? The SMART grant is an IIJA program which requires no matching funds. It's a two-phase program, with stage one being a planning and prototyping phase and stage two being an implementation phase. The maximum amount of funding that's available under stage one is $2 million, and that would be provided over 18 months. The maximum amount currently being referenced under stage two is $15 million over 36 months. Importantly, you have to have completed a stage one grant application in order to be eligible for a stage two grant application. As Eric mentioned, this NOFO has already been released. It was released on May 13th, and applications are due on July 12th. So it's a short time frame, but it's not a giant application process. And it's still quite achievable to get applications turned in by July 12th. The technologies that are available under this program are connected vehicles or intelligent sensor-based infrastructure. That's the kind of technology that can do vulnerable road user alerts. It can also be part of helping to assess traffic flows and modifying traffic signals accordingly. And then smart traffic signals are also part of this program. So the Road Commission for Oakland County is where we are currently doing our SMART grant. We did partner with the Road Commission for Oakland County to submit a grant application along with a team of partners. So it was a team-based application, and we were awarded it. And then the Road Commission for Oakland County was quickly able to put into place contracting arrangements with the team that had been part of the grant application. The overall goal of our project is to plan for an economically sustainable model, as well as a prototype deployment of CV2X technology. The objectives of our program include developing a comprehensive plan for deploying across Oakland County, or a plan that could be used in other regions. The creation of a public-private partnership for model, or for deployment rather, that includes revenue generation. So we are looking to bring private financing to the table that is part of helping to expand the deployment from that which could be funded with government monies. And then we also have part of our deliverables is a plan to engage and educate the public and key community and industry stakeholders related to the benefits of V2X, and then also to develop a plan to prepare for a future workforce to build and maintain V2X infrastructure and vehicles. A lot of these things are specific to Oakland County, but the principles of them can be applied to other locations. Things like your particular community engagement strategy is going to look a little different in each given location. The particular use cases and the revenue generating strategies that might be employed will look different in each different jurisdiction, because each jurisdiction has got different issues that they are trying to solve. And the future workforce development aspects will also look a little bit different depending on what programs already exist within a given community. So we are calling our project Sustainable Safety. Sustainable safety is about economic sustainability. We want to be able to deliver safety technology, but using an economically sustainable model. So we're building a business and financial model, which includes a financial model, figuring how much revenue can we generate. What will the procurement or alternative delivery model look like if we're employing a public-private partnership model? And again, that will look different in each jurisdiction, depending on the procurement rules in the given jurisdiction. What's the project delivery structure? How much of, and by that we mean how much of the project will be done by the public partner and how much will be done by the private partner. And that is also something that looks quite different from one jurisdiction to another. There are certain jurisdictions that have already done quite a bit of deployment of V2X technology, and where the local infrastructure owner operator really likes to be very hands-on and involved and understands this technology. There's other jurisdictions that want to be a lot more hands-off. They recognize that this is complicated technology, and they're looking for a private partner to do a lot of the heavy lifting associated with planning, building, and deploying the technology. We have to address the question of how much and how fast. How much infrastructure can we deploy with how much money, and how fast can we do it? I'll tell you a story about that a little further into this presentation, because we are still deliberating that question of how much and how fast. Most jurisdictions who don't have any experience with this technology are going to have a hard time keeping up with the US DOT National Deployment Plan targets, because they're aggressive. They're very big numbers of intersections that the US DOT is looking to have equipped with V2X technology as soon as possible. Then there's a question about the number of and the source of vehicles that are going to be part of the next phase of deployment. Sorry, just a couple more comments on that last slide. One more back. There we go. Thank you. So government vehicles is always the first candidate. It's a little bit easier for a government to say, yes, we're going to equip all of our vehicles, all of our emergency vehicles, our maintenance vehicles, our snow plows, whatever vehicles they operate. But we have found, working in Oakland County, that there's many cities in Oakland County, and it was hard actually to figure out how many vehicles actually are within the county that belong to a government entity. So that's been a big job. In addition, we don't want just government vehicles to be part of the deployment. We would like to see private vehicles or commercial fleets be part of the deployment, and I'll talk some more about that. All of those things feed into a model that talks about how much government funding should we be thinking about versus private funding. And then we've been having discussions with investors to get their input on that set of considerations. The use cases that we've deployed in our prototype demonstration, and just for sake of clarity, the prototype demonstration is part of what happens during the first phase of the project, the planning phase. So phase one planning is mostly about planning for the future, but there is a prototype demonstration of technology where at 5 intersections, we're demonstrating aspects of what will be part of the larger deployment when it is implemented. So at 5 intersections, we are demonstrating vulnerable road user alerts, signal priority for the county's maintenance vehicles, something we call fleet intelligence, which is aggregated enhanced data that any fleet owner would be interested in. And then the use of the extended transportation spectrum. And again, that is showing how the unlicensed Wi-Fi, which is now adjacent to the dedicated 5.9 spectrum, how that unlicensed uniband can be used to overcome the reduction in the 5.9 gigahertz spectrum. There'll be additional use cases that are part of our stage 2 deployment, but these were the ones that we thought were most important for demonstrating subscription services and revenue generation opportunities. So the question of how much, how fast is one we've spent a lot of time analyzing in order to start to think about how many intersections and which intersections we wanted to consider for our stage 2 deployment. We did extensive analysis of the crash rate and severity of crashes at intersections throughout the county. We wanted to make sure we were deploying in disadvantaged communities. We wanted to make sure we were deploying in those locations where there was a vulnerable road user present, so places where there's high pedestrian or cyclist traffic. We had to take into account the traffic cabinet age and space within the cabinet, because only a certain type of traffic cabinet is ready to handle this new technology that is part of V2X deployments. We had to look at what connectivity was available at each intersection and whether there was fiber or wireless backhaul that could be employed. There are network issues that need to be taken into consideration, especially with respect to the network operating within the traffic operations center. And then what was the jurisdiction of these different intersections that we were considering? A lot of the intersections were Oakland County jurisdiction or Road Commission for Oakland County jurisdiction, but many of them are MDOT jurisdictions at the Michigan Department of Transportation. So we're navigating what that means for purposes of the next phase of deployment. The community engagement part of the project, I thought was especially fascinating. In order to ensure we got proper input to what was needed to engage the community, we formed an advisory team that included city managers, engineers, university professors, transportation officials, and core team members who are all involved in the process of thinking about who needed to be part of a stakeholder engagement exercise, what messages should be communicated to those stakeholders, and what form of messaging should be employed. The key messages that they came up with were emphasizing safety, privacy, and improved costs that come about when this technology is deployed. And then the distribution methods and materials have resulted in a wide spectrum of choices, ranging from one-pagers to 60-minute videos, as well as the collection of testimonials from people who have been in car crashes. One of the things the community engagement team recognized in the course of this project was that most people didn't really understand the extent to which safety is an issue, either in the country or in this particular county. It's not something we talk about very much. And so without there being an awareness of the problem we're trying to solve, it's hard to embrace the technology that is being deployed to solve the problem. So we recognize there is a need to educate about the problem we're solving. And then we had to determine a timeline for implementation and realize that some of the engagement would start in phase 1, but most of it would be completed in phase 2. For industry engagement, we had to identify stakeholders. Those include OEMs, fleets, and tier 1 suppliers. We developed and distributed pre-interview materials. We had to help most of these folks understand the use cases that we were talking about. And then we conducted and summarized 1-hour interviews and analyzed the key takeaways. This was a pretty extensive process that we undertook, and it was very interesting to get an understanding of the extent to which there was an awareness or lack of awareness about what V2X technology is and how it could be employed to help address some of the key issues that fleet operators were struggling with. Safety is a very big issue for fleet operators. Most of the smaller fleet operators didn't understand there is technology available that could assist with the reduction of crashes or improvement in safety. The OEMs and the larger fleet operators certainly understand that V2X technology can do these things, but most of them are waiting for some sort of federal directive to come down from NHTSA or from the DOT. So lessons learned through this project is that SMART is a really excellent program for planning a larger project. That we've done an awful lot with this $2 million budget, and there's no way we could have prepared for the larger deployment without having some paid means of planning this exercise. It's a very fast project. To try to undertake an infrastructure planning project in 12 to 18 months is quite remarkable. So the extent to which you can make a team-based application and really have a clear idea of what you're going to be doing during that 12 to 18 month period prior to being awarded the contract is going to help ensure you can meet that fast timeline. That's why I suggest consider making a team-based application and consider procurement in advance. I have heard about a couple projects that went out to bid after they had found out that their project was awarded, and they found that that was making it very challenging for them to complete the project in the timeline that was available. So if you can consider procurement in advance of submitting your application, that's probably going to help you meet that fast timeline. You can see we had a pretty big team. We do have a big team. Each of these are significant players in the transportation, intelligent transportation industry. None of these projects can be done by just one company. It is a real ecosystem of partners that need to cooperate to deliver. And we're delighted to work with these folks. You probably know some of these names. AECOM is probably well known across the country. ITS America, of course. Coda Wireless is a very well-known hardware company. ISS is an SCMS, Security Credentialing and Management Systems company. Brand Motion is an aftermarket installer. They also do a lot of workforce development. Operis is a financial modeling firm out of London, England, that has specialized in helping with a lot of privately financed infrastructure deployments. And Integral Blue is a systems integrator and installer that is based in Michigan. That's my presentation. Thank you for your time this morning. I look forward to answering any questions that you might have later. Chandra, over to you.
Thank you, Erin. Eric, can I get my slides, please? Okay, yeah, you can take the text off of all tools. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Hello, you're on the last slide, Eric. Can you go to the first slide, please? Okay, my name is Chandra. I'm with the East Central Intergovernmental Association. So my presentation will talk about where we are, what's the background of the project, what we are talking about, and then why did we apply for the SMART grant and what are we planning to do with that grant is what I'll be talking about. Next slide, please. So we are located in Iowa. We are in the eastern part of Iowa. If you see the slide, the green portion is our service area, and the blue portion is the metropolitan area within our service area, and that's where the project is located. So the metropolitan area covers 3 states. It's part of Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin. So when we started working on this project, we coordinated with all 3 DOTs. And obviously we are on Mississippi, so we have 2 river crossing bridges, and that a lot of issues with the bottlenecks and all that with the bridge incidents. So that triggered this project for us. So next slide, please. So before we walk into the project, there is a huge amount of investment made by the cities within the metropolitan area. We had fiber covering pretty much every street within the metropolitan area, as well as signals. We have camera systems. For a metropolitan area of our size, like 100,000, we got 1,350 cameras covering the whole city. And these cameras are all connected with fiber. That helps us a lot. And then we have detection everywhere and performance measures for this detection. So this helped us to take us into the next generation model. So with all this information, we thought of saying, how can we automize our signal system and the whole traffic count system in our region with all these devices in place. Next slide, please. So this is our project that we are working on right now. This is called the Traffic Routing with Efficiency and Effective Traffic System, called STREETS. This is a automated traffic system, which is first of its kind. So when we approach Federal Highway, their point is, well, most of the time when you do a traffic system, you always try to take a corridor and you try to make it efficient. But what you're doing is you're taking the problem and giving it to corridors which are adjacent to it or next to it. So they are interested to see if we can treat the whole metropolitan area as one system, and the whole system should react to a situation on the ground automatically, so that we are not just trying to avoid the problem, but we are trying to mitigate it throughout the system. So that's what we came up with this project called STREETS project. So it is an automized system using AI-based video analytics on our system, and where our signal systems will automatically adjust them to the ground truth. And obviously, the way this system is designed is broken down into 5 modules. The first one is the data collection. The data collection comes through our camera systems at the intersections. We got 120 intersections. All 120 will be collecting data with the turn volumes to speeds to number of vehicles crossing the intersection and so on and so forth. Then we have the control systems, the signal systems that will be providing the information back to the microsimulation model. The microsimulation model will take this information compared to the existing scenario on the ground and see if there's a issue on the ground. If that's the case, then it creates automatically the different scenarios, and those scenarios will be provided to the ATMS, and the ATMS will create automated signal systems for those intersections, and they'll be deployed to the ground, and the system continues. The microsimulation model runs every 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. So that's the idea. So with this, we will get 24/7 traffic counts throughout the system, and the 24/7 speed counts, and as well as the BMTs, VHTs, and signal timing, and so on. So as you go through the process, you'll be getting very rich data throughout the metro area 24/7. And obviously, to store all this, we are using cloud-based technology to store this data. So next slide, please. So as I said, the micro simulation model, it is done through AIMSUN, where the model will be running every 5 to 7 minutes, but it also will be predicting 15 to 30 to 45 to 60 minutes scenarios into the future, basing on the ground truth. And it also looks at the historical trends, and it will be comparing to that. And basing on that, it will be responding to the system and providing the information. Now it's up to the engineering staff whether they want to automize it or you want to get involved and adjust the system. So we have both options in that. So that's what the micro simulation model will be doing. So next slide, please. Then comes the information from our signal systems. We have a dashboard that will help us to have a full set of automated traffic signal performance measures on that. And that system is very well integrated with the advanced traffic management system. And that system can be run automatically, or it can be run manually basing on the scenario. So obviously, it is anticipated that it will take a couple of iterations, like to come to an optimized value. So if you ask us right now, saying it's working perfect, no, we are testing the system now for another 5 to 6 months. It will be adjusting the system. After that, the system will be performing to its optimum value. So next slide, please. So as I said, the street video analytics at all 120 intersections are designed to count the traffic volumes, which is like not just traffic only, it will be having pedestrians and bike crossings and everything. And this will help us to determine the capacity at the intersections as well as the amount of time taken for the traffic to clear the intersection. And because with that information, that's what the model will be using to predict the capacity issues on the ground. So, and next slide, please. Now, all this information, what we are getting with the detour routes, the traffic volumes and all that, right now, all we are able to do is provide this information to public through website as well as the DMS boards. Right now, for phase 1, we got 20 DMS boards, and phase 2, we'll get the 30. So the DMS boards, the problem with that is they are all great, but we can only provide a very point information. With all this rich information we have, we can just say that, hey, for your downtown, the travel time is 21 minutes, or there's a congestion ahead, and so on and so forth. So that triggered us to look into a system which can provide all this information to a vehicle and see if we can gather the same amount of information from the vehicle to our system so we can adjust it. That's where we applied for the SMART grant program. So next slide, please. So the SMART grant project that we applied is a multi-agency program project. Like it includes the metropolitan area, the city of Dubuque, and then we have all 3 DOTs, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Iowa. And obviously we have the small communities too within the system. So we applied for the stage 1 of the funding, where the idea is to study our area and see what else we need to do to accommodate this data transfer in future. And once we do that, then we want to come up with a list of improvements that we need to make. And that will be our phase 2 implementation to fill the gap for the data gaps and so on and so forth. So obviously the private partners on this project is Herman. Herman will be using their equipment to test our system and make sure that the data, what we are creating, is in a unique model so that others can use it in the future, like other car makers and vehicle makers can use it. And Parsons is our consultant on this project. So next slide, please. So the way we are designing this is we have the original equipment manufacturer, in this case, Herman. They'll be using their data, their technology to look at our data and how to standardize our data in such a format that not only them, but anyone who wants to test their equipment can use our data and use our system to check their equipment. And for us, we want to create a data in such a way that in real time, using the V2X connections, we are able to provide this information to third party. And obviously, this will take our system to next generation. And obviously, we want to eventually use the information to the vehicle to our system to make it better. So that's what our project is right now. So right now we got the approval to get into a contract with the Federal Highway. We are working with that on that, sorry, USDOT. We are working on that, but we are already working with Parsons on a contract with them. So Parsons will be the lead consultant working with us and Herman and all three DOTs to connect our system into the overall network. Next slide, please. So overall, that's my presentation. It's a pretty much 10,000 feet level presentation. I did not dive into a lot of details, but I'll be very happy to address any questions you have. So.
Well, thanks to both of you for those excellent presentations. Two obviously very interesting projects. Let me ask each of you if you have some thought on the early steps that communities can and should be taking if they're interested in whether for the SMART program or some future opportunity. But as they're starting to make their way toward this type of a project, what are some of those early steps they can be taking and thinking about now before, as they're at the beginning of that process?
Sorry, I was on mute there. When we were preparing for the Smart Grant application, like even prior to the NOFO coming out, we were working to get partners on board and in agreement about the issues that we were going to tackle. So to the extent you've done some of that work already, then you've got, a team that is aligned and ready to go. If you haven't, then I would encourage you to try to do it as fast as possible. And again, to make that team-focused application or team-based application. One of the things that we spent a lot of time thinking about even prior to being awarded the project was what corridors might we want to deploy on. Originally, we were thinking about trying to find those corridors where there were commercial fleets traveling, because we wanted to introduce a subscription service for those commercial fleets to enjoy signal priority. But as discussions progressed with our public partner, we decided that we would not focus initially on those commercial fleet corridors, but rather on the corridors where there was the biggest safety need. So we could, if we had decided that earlier in our deliberations, we could have done some of that analysis prior to even being awarded the project. Most agencies have got a lot of information about their crash rates and their congestion levels and the types of crashes that are happening. So that's going to give you information right away to think about what corridors you might want to be deploying on. And you'll probably end up needing to do more of that work once the project starts. I'm always impressed when I listen to Chandra talk about the amount of work they had done prior to receiving a SMART grant in terms of upgrading their intersections to new cameras or to new traffic signals, and also that they've got cameras in locations where they're deploying. Those are all things that have to happen in order to have that, sort of perfect future intersection. So it is important to understand where are you at in your overall process of upgrading, and based on that, how much will you be able to do in the course of both the first and second phase of the SMART grants.
Yeah, in our case, I agree with what Erin said. In our case, it's more like we did not plan for a SMART grant. As we are going through our project, we walked into a problem and we are trying to find a solution for the problem. And when we are talking to USDOT about our problem, they recommended to look into this program because they said this will be a very good program for this project. And then when we talk to the DOTs in our area, all three DOTs like to partner in this project because they really want to test it in a metropolitan area, because right now they are doing an I-80 and I-90 corridors, but not specifically into a metropolitan area. So that's how we walked into the project and the program. We did not pre-plan this. But as we were going through the writing the application, we found out that we need to do our homework, which we already did. That helped us to write the application. So we got our partnership lined up. We got our plans lined up and the equipment installed as we are going through, and we have a working project that's creating the data, that helped us to write the application in a better way. So
That's great. So we did have a question in the Q&A. What considerations were made for ongoing operating costs, e.g. software licenses, for example, for technology upgrades pursued through the SMART grant program, which is ultimately a limited time grant?
So that's a big focus of our project and the whole concept of sustainable safety, the idea that we need to have some sort of economically sustainable model if these technology deployments are going to be able to continue to operate and be maintained, for many years into the future. So the financial model that we have built recognizes that operations and maintenance have to be covered from some source. We don't want that to be a burden on the public agency, but we want to be able to bring private financing to the table and revenue generating opportunities to the table to ensure that there is a source of funding to pay for that ongoing operations and maintenance.
So in our case, when we designed our original project, the streets project, we looked at the operations of the system basing on how much it costs us to do it manually with more staff, and if you automate it, how much you're saving or what will be the cost. And we are able to come up with a module which is pretty much like time saving and saving funds in the long run. Now coming to the SMART grant implementation, obviously that's what the phase 1 of the study will be doing, to see what will it cost to upgrade the system, but what will it also cost to maintain the system in the long run. So that's what our focus will be.
Great. And how does this apply to optimizing transit operations, for example?
So many of the use cases that we are demonstrating in Oakland County could apply to transit vehicles. Signal priority is a very popular first use case to make available to transit vehicles. There are not many transit vehicles in Oakland County. It's, Michigan is the home of the motor vehicle. So there's not a lot of public transit, but signal priority is widely deployed in other jurisdictions. Starting with transit vehicles. The introduction of vulnerable road user detection is something that can be made available to your transit vehicles as well as any other equipped vehicle. And that means that any transit vehicle is going to be getting information about the presence of vulnerable road users at intersections, which is especially good because a lot of, bus stops are right near an intersection. If somebody's running to catch a bus, then the transit operator will get to know about that. So like I said, the use cases that we're demonstrating can be made available to transit vehicles. It's just not the case that there's many in the particular project that we're doing.
So in our case, as the existing project, the transit is already part of the project. So all the EMS vehicles, transit vehicles, and obviously the school systems are already taken into consideration. So they will be looking at signal prioritization for them. So the same group will be also be looked upon on the SMART grant side. So
Great. So another viewer asked, how is revenue generated? They were not clear exactly on how that works.
Revenue is generated through a subscription model for different services that are made available because of the infrastructure being in place. It'll be up to any given local jurisdiction what services they might want to charge for. Commercial signal priority is one that can be made available to commercial fleet operators. Subscription for vulnerable road user alerts, which are being provided over Wi-Fi, is an example of a subscription service that can be made available. Access to a dedicated lane or corridor at certain times of day, something that can be provided. Congestion pricing, road usage charge. There's a wide variety of services that can be monetized, but each jurisdiction is very unique and quite different in terms of what things they might feel comfortable charging for.
yeah, from our standpoint, we are not there yet. So that's what the study will be helping us to figure it out. So I think Erin already have 1 year of experience in the project, so they are way ahead than us on this side. So
yeah. So last question about, unless anybody else puts something in the Q&A, but talk a little bit about roles. Obviously, each of you comes from a different part of this deployment. Can you talk a little bit more about the role, for example, that P3 Mobility plays and can play, and then also from the, I suspect most of the folks on here are from regional planning organizations, what your role was, Chandra, and who else you brought in order to finish that partnership and have everybody you needed at the table.
Okay, so we really have served in this project as the project lead, the project developer and team leader. That being said, we're a small company and we recognize there's just not enough of us to go around to do that in multiple projects across the country. So we've been working hard to establish relationships with the different engineering firms that do transportation projects, and we have worked with many of them at this point. So we're quite comfortable partnering with an engineering firm. But we're also unique in terms of thinking about the revenue generation aspect of a project, and I think often need to play a role to help folks think outside the box in terms of what revenue generation might look like. What a public-private partnership can look like and how it can be structured has got it's a wide spectrum. As I mentioned earlier, you can have a public agency that really wants to do all of it themselves, and all we're going to do is license them some technology to help them do what they want to do. In other instances, you've got a public agency that really wants us or the private team to do almost everything. And it has been a lot like that with the Road Commission for Oakland County. They've really leaned on the private team of partners to think about everything that needs to be done. That being said, they still like to be the ones to get into their traffic cabinets. They don't want to hand that off to somebody else. We're trying to figure out what the right amount of their involvement might be for phase 2. I mentioned earlier that when we put a number in front of them about how many intersections we might try to do in phase 2, we wanted to go with the USDOT targets, which is that the USDOT wants to see 50% of intersections in large city centers equipped in 5 years' time. So when we put that number in front of the Road Commission for Oakland County, they have 1,400 intersections. We said we want to target 700 intersections, 50% in the next 5 years. They just about fell off their chairs because they're used to doing maybe 10 a year. So there's a big difference between 10 a year and 700. But then again, if you've got a team of private partners who are doing all the work, it can look quite different. So we're still figuring out what that balance of involvement or responsibility will be for phase 2 of the project.
So in our case, we are the Council of Governments, but we are also the metropolitan organization for the area. So being the MPO, it's our goal to make sure that the system is all working good and making sure that the congestion is less and the safety is high. And as you all know, we should meet federal highways regulations and also performance measures. So this project started with us taking the lead. Then we brought in the city engineering, traffic engineer on board for City of Dubuque. Then to get more resources and more knowledge on this, we partnered with University of Florida professor, one of the professors there. So we three combinedly started getting this concept built and all that. And as we went on, we started adding the DOTs to the mix. And then later on, we had federal highways. So the MPO took the lead with then the city traffic engineering joined the team. And then from there on, we just expanded. And this is where we are right now. So
Great. Another question about the subscription model and your thoughts on any safeguards that should be in place. So we're prioritizing public transportation, not just the consumer or commercial vehicles, or any other safeguards, I guess, that you considered or thought about.
Yeah, it's a really important topic. I mean, sometimes people have a very strong reaction if they hear that you're going to charge for safety. And we've been encouraged to not talk that way, to say, what's being charged for is in things that will save you time or things that will save you money. At the same time, I have a mixed reaction to that because there's really nothing in life that is free. It is, your job as government officials to ensure the safety and well-being of your citizens. And people have to pay for water, they have to pay for electricity. So it's sort of a strange concept that there's something called safety that should be delivered for free when there's a cost to deploy it. So it's just a question of how is that cost going to be distributed? Is it going to be distributed to taxpayers, you know, on some kind of prorated basis? And there are some jurisdictions that'll say, yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're just going to make everybody share the cost of it. There's others that are going to say, no, it's more important to us that people be paying if they're the ones who are using it more. And therefore, the folks who are traveling these roads more should be the ones who are paying for it. That's where you have folks leaning more towards things like congestion pricing or road usage charge or curbside pricing. But again, each jurisdiction is different and the messaging is important. There's a concept that is sometimes upheld in the transportation industry that people won't pay for safety, that they don't want a car that has got, you know, they won't pay additional amounts for a car that has safety features. Again, there's been research done to show that's not the case. So it kind of is this thing that is held out that's not really true. And people will pay for safety. And again, the more you're prepared to do messaging about why safety is important, why people should care for it, the more care about it, the more likely is they'll want to pay for it. So it's a delicate issue that needs to be handled sensitively, but I think it's one that is a really important thing to have good, robust discussion around.
Excellent. Well, let me say a big thank you to both of you. This was a great conversation. I know both of you are still really at the beginning of your projects and your deployments. And so perhaps we can have you back to talk about that. And I do suspect we're probably at the very beginning of this V2X conversation as well. So much more to come on that. So thanks everybody for joining us today and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to meet you all.